So we did this slide yesterday, but just to kind of bring us back to where we were. The circulatory system's function is to deliver things, mainly. Deliver oxygen, deliver nutrients to all the cells of our body, but also to help remove waste, to pick up waste products at all of our cells and allow us to get rid of those. And so our circulatory system is powered by the heart. Okay. It is 4 chambers. We name the parts of the heart. So there's 4 kind of what's another word for a chamber?
Sectors.
Areas within the heart that blood goes into. Okay. The right side of the heart is on your right side. So if you figure your right hand, that's where the right side of your heart is. All organs are named as if you're talking about them in your own body. It's sometimes confusing because when I look here, okay, this says right atrium, but as you look at it, it's on the left side of your paper. You have to think about this heart as if it's in my own body. This is my right hand. That's my right atrium of my heart. This is my left hand. This is the left side of my heart. The same is true of other organs that are in pairs, like your kidneys. Like this is my right kidney back here. It's on my right side. But as you're looking at me, it's on the left. So when we think about how the heart works, this is kind of like if we cut through the heart and looked inside of it. You don't really have to worry about all the details about what these parts are all called. Okay? I'll just explain it a little bit though so you can understand. So the heart itself is connected by arteries and veins to all the parts of the body. Okay? And that's when we see all this stuff connected to the heart. Those are all the arteries and veins, okay, that attach and bring the blood into and out of the heart. So if we think about sort of this, let's start with the right side of the heart. So the right side of the heart, this is, remember, deoxygenated blood comes into the right side of the heart. This down here collects all the blood from the lower part of the body, below the heart. It all comes in through this tube. This tube brings in all the blood from above the heart. And all that blood empties into this right atrium. It then goes through a little valve, a little one-way door. That's what these valves are. They allow the blood to go that way, but not in reverse. Sometimes people have leaks in these valves. And it might, have anyone ever heard of a heart murmur?
Mm-hmm. So where it just stops for a second?
No, that's when the blood, some of these valves might not close fully, and the blood may flow backwards slightly, and a doctor can hear that. And it sounds different when a doctor listens to your heart. And some types of heart murmurs are very common. Sometimes kids have them when they're young, and then they kind of outgrow them. Like my daughter had a heart murmur, I don't know, until she was like 17 or 18, and then it kind of went away.
What does it just sound like?
I don't exactly know, like, exactly the sound.
Look it up.
Yeah, I'm sure we could find it, but I think it sounds like, usually the heartbeat is like a 2, it's like boop, boop, every time your heart beats. Boop, boop.
Just like that?
Just like that. I mean, it's basically identical to that sound I just made. And sometimes if there's a weird, I can't even make the sound because I don't know what it sounds like, some other sound in there, that might be an indicator.
You just got a murder.
Yeah. So,
Mr. Duras,
what's that?
I need you to do it.
What?
Otherwise, I won't be able to understand.
That's exactly what it sounds like. So,
They sound like
yeah.
good.
I'm a professional. Chelsea, do you have something?
Can you feel the difference?
No, you can't feel it yourself, usually. Now, if there's major issues with these valves, that can be dangerous for a person's health. They can do surgery. There's artificial valves. They can replace them. They can try to fix them if they're not working properly. Because it's important blood is going in the proper direction. So it comes into the right atrium, deoxygenated, goes into the right ventricle. The ventricles are bigger chambers. They're the chambers that when they contract, they pump the blood out. So this blood is low in oxygen. Where do you think it needs to go to then?
The heart.
It's in the heart. Where does it go next? If it's
The
low in
lungs.
oxygen,
The right end.
The right is.
eventually, but where does it need to go if it's low in oxygen?
The lungs.
Yes.
The lungs make the oxygen.
That blood goes out through this pulmonary artery to each of our lungs. And what happens to the blood when it gets to our lungs?
They oxygenate.
It gets oxygenated, right? We breathe in. Air comes into our lungs. Oxygen from the air diffuses into that blood. And now it has oxygen. And so it comes back into the heart, but this time it goes to the left side. The left side of the heart handles oxygenated blood. Goes into the left atrium, goes into the left ventricle, and gets pumped out through this huge blood vessel called the aorta to every part of the body. One of these branches goes up to your head. One goes down your left arm, your right arm. It loops behind your heart. It goes down to your lower body. It distributes this blood that now has lots of oxygen, bless you, to the rest of your body. That blood goes to your cells. It gives up its oxygen to them, and then it comes back to the heart again and repeats that cycle all over again. And that's how our heart works. It keeps the oxygenated, deoxygenated blood separate from each other. Other animals, like fish, only have a two-chambered heart. They have one atrium, one ventricle. So the blood that goes to their gills is mixed around with blood in their body. It's just not as efficient. And so we kind of see this pattern. Right side of the heart to the lungs, left side of the heart to every place in the body and back again.
Is that why fish are so stupid?
Fish can be very smart.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Because, like, they always bite the hook.
Well,
They're shiny.
maybe you only are catching the less bright fish. Maybe there are some fish that have been avoiding your hook for their entire lives, and they're really
So,
smart.
I think I've caught every single fish ever.
Really
Yeah.
interesting.
You probably
Yeah.
didn't catch every fish. You haven't caught a perch? No, I caught a perch.
All right.
before. You haven't caught a soy fish?
So let's talk about the blood vessels. So we have lots of tubes within our body that carry the blood all over. There's a few categories. Arteries. Arteries are the thickest, largest blood vessels in our body. They're muscular. They have to withstand a lot of pressure. Every time our heart beats, it forces blood into arteries, and so they have to be able to deal with that pressure. The arteries are the blood vessels that go away from the heart. You can remember that. Artery, away, AA. And they generally carry oxygenated blood. And it's important that these arteries are nice and smooth on the inside so that the blood can flow through them easily to reach every part of our body. But sometimes things happen. Sometimes these arteries can get clogged up. What can they get clogged up with?
Blood.
Well, the
Oh,
blood-
yeah. I remember now. They can get clogged up with like gunk and stuff, like grease. I forgot what it was. It was something.
Well, grease is not a bad word, but things that we eat in our diet can have like cholesterol or saturated fats that if we consume them for a long period of time, they can start to form deposits inside of our blood vessels, our arteries. And that's what you see here. It's kind of getting gunked up. And that makes it more difficult for blood to go through there. And so that could limit the flow of blood to different parts of the body. If that happens in a very important part of the body and it gets very narrow, that can cause issues like a heart attack or aneurysm is a swelling of that artery. So here's where our main arteries are. And again, you can feel your pulse in these places. You can feel in your carotid artery when you feel it in your neck. Okay, you can feel the arteries in your wrist, and you can feel your heart beating because of that pressure. Veins are another type of blood vessel. So arteries carry blood away from the heart. What do you think veins do?
To the heart.
Carry it back to the heart. Correct. Okay, they carry blood to the heart. And veins are thinner. There's not high pressure in the veins, so they don't have to be as flexible. And there's also, because there's not high pressure, the blood isn't being forced through them as much. And so they have these valves in them. These little, again, one-way doors that keep the blood flowing in one direction. Exactly, just like Harry Styles, yes. And so as sometimes these valves break down and they don't work properly, and that could lead to what's called varicose veins. That sometimes people get, especially as they get older, where their veins kind of swell up because these valves, blood is kind of collecting in them and they swell up. And then in between the arteries and the veins are these networks of extremely tiny blood vessels called capillaries. These capillaries are so small that blood cells can only go through one at a time. That's how narrow they are. Okay? They connect the arteries to the veins. And this is where materials diffuse in and out of the blood in the capillaries. Basically, if you were to only look at a person's capillaries and strip away every other part of their body, you would see the exact same shape of them, because every part of your body is surrounded by these capillary networks. And so, as blood goes through these really narrow capillaries, things can diffuse in and out of our blood. Right? Oxygen from our blood cells can diffuse into our muscles, for example. Nutrients can diffuse out. At the same time, waste products can diffuse into our blood to be disposed of. If we get a bruise, if you smack your arm on a desk or something and it turns blue, right, blackish, a bruise, that's because you have some damage to the capillaries there. You have some bleeding underneath there. And that's what a bruise is. And excess glucose in our blood can damage these capillaries as well, and that can lead to some of the effects of diabetes. What's that? Yeah, a bruise could turn purple, yeah.
Do you know why? Because I have low iron and I bruise easier. Why?
I don't know how those two things, are they, you've been told those two things are connected?
By my doctor.
I don't know. Low iron, we already talked about red blood cells. So yesterday we talked about red blood cells. They have I'm going to talk about that too, because a lot of people say this. So red blood cells have hemoglobin as a protein, and at the center of hemoglobin is iron. And the iron in hemoglobin is what actually picks up the oxygen and holds on to it. So if a person doesn't have enough iron in their diet, if they're iron deficient, they may not have enough hemoglobin in their blood, it doesn't carry enough oxygen, and then they could have the effects of what we call anemia. Might be tired or fatigued easily, but I don't know how it's connected to bruising. So good question for your doctor. And then you report back to me, and I don't know everything. That's only the one thing I don't know.
All right.
Aisha? Maybe, I don't know the effects of iron on blood clotting, because that involves the platelets, but that's another area I should research.
I know who has the answer.
So here is an important diagram. This shows blood that's coming from the heart. It's oxygenated. All right, let me talk about that, Luke. Because if I go back a couple slides, why the blood cells are red and they're blue? When I look at the heart diagram, it's red and blue. So this is a misconception. Even some teachers sometimes teach this, but it's not actually true. Deoxygenated blood isn't really blue. In fact, it's pretty much always red. It does get brighter red when it has oxygen, and it gets darker red or maybe purplish when it doesn't, when it gives up its oxygen, but it's certainly not red and blue. But we always use those colors in diagrams and models to symbolize red for oxygenated blood, blue for deoxygenated blood. But it's actually not in our bodies, like our deoxygenated blood isn't really blue.
I always blue blood. You imagine any blue blood?
What is it? Who has blue blood?
Was it hippo?
No, I think
Spock has green.
horseshoe. Is it horseshoe crabs? I think have purple blood.
Spock has green.
Oh, really?
Baby, live long and prosperous.
All right, so here we have a capillary diagram. Blood that's coming from the heart, that's oxygenated, comes in. It goes through these tiny capillaries where it can then give away the oxygen it's been carrying. It can give nutrients to these cells. It can also remove waste products from those cells, carbon dioxide or other waste, and then it can take those waste products out of the body through excretion. These cells inside could be anywhere. These could be cells of our lungs. They could be cells in our brain or muscles. Basically, these capillaries surround all of our body tissues. Let's talk about a couple types of diseases of the circulatory system. There's a lot. Hypertension is high blood pressure. Okay, this is the most common form of circulatory system disease. When our blood pressure is higher, okay, it can affect lots of different organs of the body. If it's too high, it can be damaging to our heart muscle, to our kidneys don't work properly. High blood pressure can be caused by lots of things. Stress raises our blood pressure. If you're feeling anxious, your blood pressure might rise temporarily. Now, if you have constant stress, that can lead to long-term high blood pressure, which can be bad for your body. Diet, lack of exercise, smoking, all of those things can affect our blood pressure. Our blood pressure can get elevated as we get older as well. Tomorrow I'll bring in blood pressure cuffs. We'll try and test our own blood pressure, even though it's really hard. Thickening of the arteries because of the buildup of cholesterol. We just talked about that. That can be happen due to a diet that's too high in fats and cholesterol. Heart attacks. So remember, our heart itself needs oxygen to pump. And it has these arteries on top of it that supply that. Even though it's filled with blood, it doesn't get oxygen from that blood. It gets oxygen from the coronary arteries, which are on the outside. These are really important. If they get clogged, if they get blocked, it can stop the flow of blood to the heart, and the heart can't work. That's what sometimes leads to a heart attack. Okay? Have you ever heard of somebody having to have bypass surgery?
No, it sounds familiar.
I'll show you a diagram here in a minute. Anemia, we talked about. When our blood doesn't carry enough oxygen, it could be because of a lack of iron. There's sickle cell disease, when a person has a genetic trait that leads to their hemoglobin being misshapen, and their blood cells, when they're low in oxygen, take on a different shape and can clog up in different parts of the body and cause pain and damage to different organs.
What is anemia? Because I think I have anemia.
Yeah, anemia is when your blood cells don't carry as much oxygen as they should. And therefore, if your blood's not carrying enough oxygen, you might get tired easily, you might get fatigued easily, because again, that oxygen is providing the energy your cells need to do all of their things. And so sometimes if it's a lack of iron, people might be given an iron supplement to take. You have to take an iron pill.
I have to take iron drops.
Yeah, or drops or something like that. That's to help boost that iron level.
You know,
What foods have iron?
Like leafy greens have iron, meats have iron in
the earth has
them.
iron.
Yeah. Lots of times when people have a deficiency, they might just take a pill to give them an iron supplement. Even like lots of cereal, sometimes you'll see they put iron in it. In fact, you can take like Raisin Bran or another fortified cereal, smash it up into tiny little dust, and run a magnet over it, you could actually collect iron out of the cereal that they put in there to help make sure people have enough iron. Aisha?
If you have a doctor, she can just like give you blood tests. Right. That's why I don't
Usually evolve so you can actually kill it, but it's not.
It's not permanent? Yeah. And lead, because our red bloods, it could be other things, not just iron, right? It could be too few red blood cells. It could be issues in the bone marrow that produce those red blood cells. And basically, we use anemia for any time we're not getting enough oxygen to all parts of our body.
Kind of reminds me of this. It kind of reminds me of this like condition where the heart is actually like on the where it's actually on the outside of the chest, and sometimes outside of the skin.
Yeah.
Kind of like this.
Yeah. All right. Leukemia is a cancer in the bone marrow. Remember, our bone marrow is where our blood cells are created, and so cancer of the bone marrow can lead to issues with our white blood cells as well. These are just some diagrams that show a few of the things I talked about. Here we see this is sickle cell disease. Okay, you can see the misshapen blood cells, and they can. It's sometimes called sickle cell anemia. Yeah, their sickle is like a crescent shape, and you could see these cells blocking the flow of blood to a certain place, and that's a genetic disease caused by a single DNA base being changed. We could see this is showing a blockage in the coronary arteries that feed the heart. You could image them, doctors image them using a catheterization where they inject a dye into the heart and use like an x-ray to look at it, and they could see the blockages. If a person does have a blockage in a coronary artery, it could be very dangerous. And so some of the ways they treat that is by putting in a stent. Have you ever heard of that? A stent? So a stent, this is a stent. It's a little mesh tube. And basically they can get this into your coronary arteries by putting a wire. It's called a catheter. It's called a cardiac catheterization. They take a wire, they put it in an artery in your hip, and they can thread this wire all the way through your arteries into your heart. And at the end of this wire that they're putting into your heart, they have a couple things. They can inject a dye to see where there's a blockage. There's a little balloon that they attach to it, and they inflate it, and that smushes the buildup so that it opens up the passageway better. They can also put one of these stents at the end. It basically opens up inside of the artery and reinforces it so that it doesn't close up again. You could see that's the little stent that they put into the heart. But they do all this using a wire. The other thing they might have to do is open heart surgery or coronary bypass surgery. What they do is they take a vein or an artery from a different part of your body and they kind of cut and paste it. So, for example, if we have a blockage right here, this blue vein, a doctor will do surgery, take a vein out of your leg that you don't really need, connect it to your aorta, connect it to your coronary artery. Now blood could go around the blockage. Or here's another one they've done on the other side of the heart.
I remember I was in kindergarten and there was a girl with the same name as me, and she got this surgery. She had
A
like
bypass
a giant
surgery?
scar from it.
Oh, really? So, yeah, and they, so the way they used to do this surgery, I mean, they still do it this way. Open heart surgery, they have to slice through the skin on your chest. They have to then slice through your pectoral muscles on your chest. And then you have your sternum. They have to saw through your sternum. Then they put this tool called a rib spreader in, and it kind of opens up in the middle of your chest so they can access your heart. And then they can do surgery there. I once played basketball, like old man basketball, with this guy, and he was like, I was probably like 15 years ago, and maybe it was 20 years ago. And so there's a guy who used to play, he was like 80 years old. And sometimes after basketball, he'd take off his shirt, and he had like a huge giant scar from having open heart surgery. And I always felt like nobody wanted to go near this guy because he had open heart surgery. We're playing basketball at Perry Gym with this guy, and he was really frail. But anyway, I don't know why I'm telling you that story. But anyway, so you would have a big scar. Now there's also newer methods they can use. They can use robotic surgery. Did I ever tell you about robotic surgery? So robotic surgery, the doctor controls these robotic arms that poke into your body. Rather than cut you wide open and expose your organs, these little, they're not too big. They're like these little, you have incisions like through your ribs, one through your belly button usually, and they can move these little arms and actually access most of your internal organs and do the surgery without cutting you wide open. The doctor's actually not at your body. He's in a little computer monitor, and he controls the robot arms with his fingers.
That's scary.
It's actually well, like 10 years ago, they brought one of these robots here. It was in like Mr. Von Gabel's.
It was one of those like micro
and you
bots?
could come in. I came in with Mr. Akiri, and you could like play with it. And like they had it all set up, and you could like pick up rubber bands and stretch them, and you could use the robot. It's really, really cool.
Did you punch Mr. Akiri with it?
No, because it's just very tiny.
They're micro.
Oh, did you?
And plus, he's my good friend, so why would I punch him?
They're
I'm
micro
not a bad
bots.
individual.
I don't know. He talks bad about you a
No,
lot.
he wouldn't.
Yeah.
Are these like microbots? You ever heard of those? Like nanobots?
Nah, they're not nanobots. You could see the arms. I'll show you videos sometime. Chelsea.
Oh, I heard of them. Like,
Malfunction and like does something wrong.
I mean, so the doctor controls it. So just like it would be the doctor making the mistake. So like it's called robotic surgery, but it doesn't do anything on its own. Like the doctor is controlling what the arms of this tool do. So I guess saying it's not like AI surgery like the robot would do it, but who knows? Maybe in the future. I'll show you a video of that sometime too. It's pretty cool. All right, let's watch this and we'll move on.